Death is one of the few experiences that every human will face, yet it remains one of the greatest mysteries. Philosophers, scientists, religious leaders, and thinkers from all walks of life have pondered the meaning and nature of death for centuries. Is death an end, a beginning, or simply a transition? And why do we, as humans, fear it so deeply, or in some cases, find peace in its inevitability? The philosophy of death explores these questions and more. It helps us understand not only the event of death, but also how it shapes the way we live our lives. In this video, we will dive into the history of thoughts about death, how different cultures and philosophers have approached it, and what these ideas mean for us today. In the early stages of human history, death was an everyday part of life. For primitive societies, survival was tough, and death could come from illness, injury, or predators. Without the benefits of modern medicine, people often died at a young age, making death a frequent occurrence. These early humans had limited understanding of the world, and their views on death were heavily influenced by their experiences with nature and survival. Many early cultures saw death as a natural part of life, rather than something to be feared. In some societies, death was seen as a continuation of life in another form, whether through reincarnation or in some spiritual realm. Despite these differences, a common theme in early thought was the need to explain death and give it meaning. Rituals and ceremonies around death helped communities come to terms with loss and make sense of the mysteries of existence. As human societies became more complex, so too did their ideas about death. Ancient philosophers began to grapple with the big questions. What happens after we die? Why do we fear death? And how should the knowledge of death shape the way we live? In ancient Greece, philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Epicurus had a lot to say about death. For Plato, death was not something to fear because it was simply the soul's release from the body. He believed that true knowledge could only be gained after death, when the soul, freed from the limitations of the physical world, could understand the universe more clearly. In this view, life was a preparation for death, and the wise person accepted death as a natural part of the soul's journey. On the other hand, the philosopher Epicurus took a different approach. He argued that death should not be feared at all because it is simply the end of consciousness. According to Epicurus, when we die, we cease to exist, and if we do not exist, we cannot experience suffering or pain. Therefore, there is nothing to fear in death because we will not be around to feel it. This way of thinking, known as materialism, asserts that everything, including our thoughts and emotions, is the result of physical processes in the brain. Once those processes stop, so does our experience of life. Religion has played a huge role in shaping how humans think about death. In medieval times, religious teachings often dominated people's views on life and death. For many, life was seen as a test or preparation for the afterlife, where one's soul would be judged. Whether it was Christianity's heaven and hell, Hinduism's cycle of reincarnation, or the Buddhist belief in nirvana, death was not the end, but a transition into another state of existence. In these systems, death was often seen as both a hope and a warning. If you lived a good, virtuous life, death would lead to peace, eternal joy, or enlightenment. But if you lived poorly, death could bring eternal suffering or a difficult rebirth. This belief in an afterlife gave death moral weight. It wasn't just about dying, but about how you lived. Even today, many people find comfort in religious explanations of death. These teachings provide a framework for understanding the unknown and help people deal with the fear and uncertainty that death brings. As science and technology have advanced, our views on death have evolved. Medical science has extended human life, cured diseases, and developed ways to manage pain and suffering. Death, which used to be an everyday part of life, has become something we delay, prevent, or hide away in hospitals and nursing homes. This shift has caused a significant change in how we experience death. In many modern societies, death is no longer a public or community event, but a private one, often managed by healthcare professionals rather than family or friends. While medicine has undoubtedly improved the quality of life for many, it has also distanced us from death, making it something we fear even more because we encounter it less often. For some, this focus on prolonging life has raised ethical questions. Should we always try to extend life, even when it comes at the cost of suffering. What is the difference between living longer and living well? These questions have led to movements like hospice care, which focuses on providing comfort and quality of life for the terminally ill, rather than trying to extend life at all costs. Alongside this, the rise of secularism has led many to look for answers outside of religion. Without the promise of an afterlife, some people turn to philosophy or personal reflection to make sense of death. They may find comfort in the idea that life is precious because it is finite, or that death gives meaning to our time on earth by making it limited. In the 20th century, existentialist philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre, Martin Heidegger, and Albert Camus explored death as an essential part of what it means to be human. Existentialism focuses on individual existence, freedom, and choice, and death plays a key role in these ideas. Sartre famously said that man is condemned to be free, meaning that because we know we will die, we must confront the reality of our own existence and make choices about how to live. Death, in this view, is not something to be feared, but something that gives life urgency. It reminds us that our time is limited and that we must take responsibility for our own lives. Camus, in his essay The Myth of Sisyphus, goes even further, arguing that the absurdity of life, that we seek meaning in a world that offers none, forces us to confront death in a new way. For Camus, accepting the absurdity of life and death allows us to live more fully. If life has no inherent meaning, then it is up to us to create our own meaning, even in the face of death. Despite all these philosophical ideas and cultural beliefs, death remains something that many people fear. But what is it about death that is so frightening? Some argue that our fear of death comes from the unknown. We don't know what happens after we die, and humans naturally fear what they don't understand. Others suggest that the fear comes from the loss of self, the idea that when we die, we cease to exist as individuals. This loss of identity, of consciousness, is deeply unsettling for many people. Psychologists like Ernest Becker have argued that the fear of death is at the root of many human behaviors. In his book, The Denial of Death, Becker suggests that much of what we do, from building civilizations to creating art, is a way of coping with our knowledge of death. By leaving something behind, whether it's children, ideas, or achievements, we try to make our lives meaningful and in some way cheat death by living on through our legacy. One of the most enduring questions about death is whether it gives life meaning. Some philosophers argue that death is what makes life meaningful. If we lived forever, there would be no urgency to do anything, no reason to make the most of our time. Knowing that our time is limited forces us to think about what we value and how we want to spend our lives. Others, however, argue that life can have meaning without death. If we could live forever, we might have more time to achieve our goals, connect with others, and experience the world. In this view, death is not necessary for life to have purpose, but rather a barrier to achieving our full potential. Whether death gives life meaning or simply ends it is a question that each person must answer for themselves. But what is clear is that our awareness of death influences the way we live. From the choices we make to the relationships we build, death is always in the background, shaping our understanding of what it means to be alive. The philosophy of death is as much about life as it is about dying. Through the ages, humans have sought to understand death, whether through religion, philosophy, or science. We fear it, try to delay it, and sometimes even embrace it, but death remains a mystery that we cannot fully grasp. In the end, perhaps the best approach to death is not to see it as something to be feared or avoided, but as a reminder of life's preciousness. By embracing the imminence of death, we can live more fully, with purpose, compassion, and a greater appreciation for the time we have. Hey there, YouTube fans! Do you want access to amazing content? Hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Stay updated with all our latest videos. Join our community of awesome subscribers. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.